Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Drive and Dish NBA podcast. My name is Kevin Rayfuse, and I am not solo this week, or this episode, I should say. Justin is still on paternity leave, so unfortunately, Justin fans, y'all are going to have to wait a little bit longer. I did hear his baby talk to me every time I got an update. So I called Justin before this to set up the stream, right? Because we got this 2-factor authentication. And baby Quinn, he was like, baby Quinn's gonna say something to you. And I was like, bro, your baby's 2 weeks old. But I got a little like not goo goo gaga, but I got like a ga, I guess. Like however you describe baby noises. But joining me this episode, Nick Grenowitz at GetNickG on Twitter, of course, the voice of the Osceola Magic. I'm still getting used to saying that.
Same.
I always want to say, how many times do you think you're going to mess that up, I guess, in your first few broadcasts?
Oh, I'm so nervous about it. I mean, I still, we were talking about, my wife and I were talking about, plans for the winter and stuff. And I said, well, it's all about the Lakeland schedule. I'm like, well, it's the Osceola schedule. So I still have not made the adjustment. Excited about the change and the move to Silver Spurs Arena, which is where I had my high school graduation, actually. So everything comes full circle in life. But
yeah, there you go.
I'm going to mess it up quite a bit, or at least I'm hoping not to.
Yeah, and I mean, it's so interesting because like Lakeland is not that far away from Orlando, right? And for those of you who probably don't know this, if you're not following the G League basketball, the Orlando Magic's G League affiliate, the now Lakeland Magic, now the Osceola Magic, have moved from Lakeland to Kissimmee, which is a little bit south of Orlando. I guess it's south of Disney World is the best way to describe it. For those of you who are like super into the area, but
it's like 45 miles from Orlando. It's like going from Chicago to, I don't know, Naperville or something like that, I guess. It's not even that. It's probably a little bit further than that.
That's great. I have zero perspective
I know.
for that, but I feel you, bro. I'm with you.
As soon as I threw that out there, I was like, nobody really understands that.
No, we have a Chicago base. They'll understand. You'll get somebody out there, but it's like, what am I going to do? We can do it for every city if we really want to.
Got to take the Dan Ryan over Kennedy whole thing. It's just,
Yeah, just do the how about that? We'll just warm up jump and we'll just talk about, our favorite short routes in every major American city. But no, we of course are going to talk the finals on this episode, get into game 1 and game 2 in a little bit. Also, there's a slew of coaching hires that I promised last episode that we were going to get to. So we'll talk about that. Even more than last time, because I think Monty Williams had just got his contract, and now Frank Vogel, of course, getting locked up in Phoenix. So we'll get into all that later. We have to warm up with, because this is such slop that I almost didn't want to talk about it, but it's a perfect warm-up topic. And Shams tweeted it, so I'll give it a little bit of credibility. Kyrie Irving has reached out to LeBron James to basically weigh his thoughts about the potential of forming a big three in Dallas. Of course, Kyrie is a free agent right now, but that would require him going back to the Mavericks, of course, playing with Luka Doncic as well. Obviously Kyrie and LeBron, plenty of success in the past. We know there's been, especially from LeBron's end, a lot of trying to get Kyrie back, most namely with the Lakers this year, of course. But they're like, how is this even going to happen? I guess that's kind of my thing. Is it's like, how do the mechanics of this work, Nick?
I don't really know. I read this and I'm just thinking, okay, so who wants this out there? Like, clearly, like it feels to me like, is it Kyrie's people letting Shams know that the Lakers and LeBron feel like there may be interest? I don't know. I mean, like, I don't even see how you could get this done. Like, if there are machinations of a trade, Dallas would basically have what, like Luka, Kyrie, LeBron, and then everyone else on minimum contracts. I don't even think that's possible at that point with the new CBA coming too. So I don't even know how this is possible. If I was Dallas, I'd throw Kyrie in the deal and try to get just LeBron and Luka. But then again, Kyrie is a free agent, so I don't think that's a sign and trade he's going to go along with.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, too, it's like you need all three if you're going to do something. I mean, clearly 2 wasn't enough last year because, you mentioned those 3 minimum contracts. I mean, it felt like more or less that's what they were doing at the end of the season. I did hear one and only one conspiracy theory that I like about it, and I'll put the tinfoil hat on for a second. And I think it was on Bill Simmons' pod, but it's starting to look a little eerie, where the thought was that you don't do it now, but Dallas goes back and then Dallas brings in Draymond Green in this offseason. They pay him, give him the contract, bring him to Dallas. And that's how they woo LeBron in eventually. You got the Kyrie and Draymond combo because we know how, listen, for as big a rivals as they were back in the day, we know how LeBron and Dre feel about each other now. Obviously, no love lost with LeBron and Kyrie. So that's a little intriguing, but that would also require, again, LeBron would have to ask out of the Lakers. But if he does that in the middle of the season, I think then you can get some steam for it a little bit. I don't think you're just going to magically poof and get LeBron James to Dallas.
I don't think you are either. And let's just, for example, first of all, you're right. They need the contract. That's what they don't have. Dallas doesn't have the big contract. Draymond would be that, or whatever that piece is that would make the money make sense. If I'm Rob Pelinka, like no one ever wants to be the guy that trades LeBron. But if I'm Rob Pelinka, I'm like, so wait a minute, I'm doing this deal and I'm getting old Draymond Green back. And
oh, no. I'm saying they all play together. No, I'm saying
they all play together. Oh, that's
Dre.
right.
Yeah, Dre would play in Dallas. They sign him as a free agent, and then they make a way to make the money work.
I still don't say they can make the money work. But then again, okay, so you have Luka, aging LeBron, you're 21, and aging Draymond Green without the Warriors ecosystem. Where's that team finishing in the West next year? Because they're not beating Denver. I don't like them more than Phoenix. I mean, like Golden State's going to look completely different. But I mean, you start going, I don't know if I like them much better than the Clippers, even though those guys don't all play together. Like, so what? You're doing this for a 5, 6, 7 seed and, hope you do what the Lakers did kind of in the playoffs and pick things up. I don't know. I don't necessarily see it because LeBron isn't that guy anymore that can just put the team on his back. You want Luka to be, but I don't see LeBron and Draymond as the type of shooters that you want to put around him either. So I once again, like, I mean, we're kind of in the dog days of the semi-off season days.
There's just nothing concrete there. Nobody gave me anything concrete. Shams just blasted that out there. And Chris Haynes did too, to be fair. So it's not like, I mean, these are credible sources, but I'm just like, you guys gave me nothing. You gave me no like indication of what a potential deal would look like. It just basically was Kyrie Irving picked up the phone and called LeBron James. And I guess maybe we're guilty about talking about this too, but like when it's coming from NBA newsbreakers like that, I'm going to at least entertain it, I guess.
Yeah, it adds some credibility to it. Like when Shams and Woj and Chris Haynes and those guys report something like this. And I guess like it's on Twitter, like report is such a firm word, but when they throw this out there, you have to kind of pay it some credence. But I don't see how a deal like this could be done. Both from a financial standpoint and also just in reality. I'm sure Mark Cuban would love to see it happen though. Cubes is in. I like the idea of Dallas not being able to get a star for basically in free agency or whatever in 25 years, and they're able to get 2 in an offseason, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly would sell tickets if nothing else. There's no doubt about that. And I mean, just I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I'm with you largely on LeBron. We talked about that a little bit when the Lakers got eliminated, but LeBron is still one of the best players ever. But even out of his own mouth, he admitted that he's not the top dog anymore. I think that's the first time he's ever said that. I've been looking at randomly top 10 lists because I always wonder how people's fluctuate kind of throughout the course of the playoffs and where they're at. Man, I've seen some with LeBron starting to be as low as like 10, 11, 12. And it's just like, it would happen eventually, but that's just still such a weird sight to see. And I mean, again, the other part of me is like, hey, LeBron James at 38 years old is still like the 10th best player in the league. That's incredible. But it is just, we've had so much, I mean, especially people that are your and I's age, that we've just had so much prime LeBron in the full experience that it is kind of jarring a little bit when it starts to come to an end.
Yeah, it goes along. I mean, anytime that you have kind of a long run of dominance like this, we saw it kind of with Brady, but Brady seems to have gotten out before, really he slowed down too much. The one for me in my life is Tiger Woods. Like watch, the win at the Masters was great years ago, but like watching Tiger and the injuries and just him slow down and his body betray himself.
Yeah.
Is another one. Or Jordan in his age, though I was a little bit younger.
He was even cooking still on the Wizards, though. That's the thing, is like even MJ at 41, 42 years old was giving you 21 points a game. Like I think LeBron could still do that for a while. Like that's the thing with LeBron is I think he's lucky in the sense that at least so far, there haven't been any indications that he's not going to have that like ugly fall off. You know what I mean? I mean, we're talking about his team getting eliminated in the Western Conference Finals here. Like, he's still a good player. This isn't, for a lot of other players, it can end more drastically. Ask Carmelo Anthony, who just retired a couple weeks ago, about the end of his prime. For Dwayne Wade, his best buddy, how quickly that came to a crash. Like, for his old teammate, Russell Westbrook, and how quickly his life has changed in the NBA. And these are all Hall of Fame guys, but, that's part of the allure, I guess. Welcome, everybody, to the Driving Dish NBA podcast. My name is Kevin Rayfuse. Again, Justin Kuzar remains on paternity leave. So joining me in his place, Mr. Nick Grenowitz. Follow him on Twitter at GetNickG. Again, we got a lot to talk about on this podcast. In the meantime, though, you can subscribe on iTunes, leave us a review, good or bad, and we will read them on the show. If you're not an Apple user, Google Play Store, Spreaker, Spotify, TuneIn, Stitcher, Amazon Music, anywhere you can find a podcast, you can find us. And if you want to watch the video version, just subscribe, search Driving Dish NBA podcast on YouTube, and you can see us talking about, everything that we're going to talk about in this episode. Great segue. And now a word from our sponsors. All right. So game one, or I guess in the last episode before this, and thank you everybody for bearing with me on the solo episode. I know it was a little shorter. I still don't love solo episodes. I feel like I'm talking to a wall. I just like the other, human being on the end. But either way, I guess as we got into the finals, my prediction in this was Denver in 5, and, we're now 2 games into the finals. Of course, the series is 1-1. I think after game 1, that, of course, was a 104-93 Denver victory in a score that probably is not indicative of how badly Denver crushed them in game 1. But then the Heat, being the Heat, making the adjustment, coming back, handling their business, 111-108 in game 2. Of course, the series is split 1. If you're Miami, you got to be thrilled getting that split, going back now to South Beach, stealing 1 from Denver. Now, in theory, you just handle your business at home and you'll be NBA champions. For Denver at the same time, look, it's 1-1, not the end of the world. You win one of these games and you flip it right back to you. I think there's a lot to like for both teams. And for me, again, it was all about the adjustments in game 2. And that was, give Spo the credit there. And by going big and going with Kevin Love, they really, because in game 1, Denver just was getting nothing but wide open dunks and just slashes into the lane. Like, it was alarming how easy it was for Jamal Murray to score off cuts, for Aaron Gordon to just fly in. I think he had 18 points in the first game, but just was flying in and getting these just wide open layups left and right. Obviously, you balance that with some good shooting, but it really did feel like Denver, or that Miami, I should say, didn't have the size to almost keep up with Denver. And Spo went big and he brought Kevin Love off the bench and into the starting lineup for game 2. And that's an adjustment that certainly paid dividends. Obviously a lot more to like for Miami, but I mean, Nick, the biggest thing I like for Miami so far is, forget the split. I love what I've seen out of Bam Adebayo. Like, even when they got crushed in game 1, like I said, one of the big X factors was going to be, you got to have Bam, and he's got to be assertive, and he's got to get to his spots, and he's got to just take the shots. Like, he has to be that real 2/3 option of the number 2, number 3 option of that offense, or I don't think you're going to have enough firepower. He has not looked passive at all. Like, he's going to bring it on the defensive end, and I think he's done a pretty admirable job against Jokic too, to an extent. Jokic is obviously killing everybody right now too, but I really think I really think Miami, you got to feel good about that though overall, with the split and with how he's played and with how he stepped up on that end.
Well, it's interesting, like when the Heat have looked bad, it's been a combination of those role players not hitting shots, whether it's Caleb Martin turning back into a pumpkin, or the other litany of guys that I saw come through the G League in Lakeland that now are
Max
just
Strus is 0 of 10 in game 1.
Exactly. Like, that's what, and really the other part of it is when Bam Adebayo is hesitant and when he's missing kind of those elbow mid-range jumpers and isn't getting to the hoop. That's when we've seen the Heat struggle. And in game 2, Bam was not just assertive, like, he was extremely active. And when he's active like that, you can kind of you have to, you're making Denver's defense work more than just Aaron Gordon sealing guys too. So, what I loved from him on the offensive side was that, as you mentioned, and then defensively, listen, Jokic is going to get his. The real question is like, how much do you make him work to get his? Because he is the dad bod god, but conditioning has always kind of been a question with him at times. And in these games, at the end of a game, can you wear him down a little bit? And I thought Bam had one of the better defensive possessions late in that game. I want to say inside of 2 minutes where, I think Jokic got the bucket, but he made him spin 3-4 times and kind of put the ball on the ground and really work for it and, use the entire 24-second clock. Guys that have won 2 MVPs and maybe should have won 3 in a row. I know this is a Sixers friendly pod, but maybe should have won 3 in a row.
Oh, I have no friendly left for the Sixers. It's fine. You can't possibly dislike them more than me. Jimmy was right. Jokic was right. Everyone was right.
The saddest thing, and we didn't disclose, but like the saddest thing about being in Greece during the Eastern Conference semifinals, they did not have the Heat Celtics game or the Sixers games on television. There could not get them while I was on the cruise, so I was so disappointed.
I didn't watch Game 7. I didn't watch.
You didn't watch it?
No.
Oh, Nick, no, that's right. You went hiking. That's right.
I hiked them out in New Hampshire. I knew when they lost Game 6 how this was going to go. I have seen this movie. I know how it was going to play out. And I said, I'm on vacation with my fiance, and I'm not going to let it ruin my vacation. So I'm going to go to a place where there's no possible cell phone service, and then I don't get mad.
That is where that's where you're different than
that's how broken I am with the Sixers. They just broke, and they did break me in a new way this year. So I guess I got to give them credit, but it's the final break. Because in a way, like when Embiid is bad, I got nothing. And that's kind of where I'm at. Is like Embiid scored 15 points in an elimination game, and his effort was shit. Like I've got nothing. I have no defense that I can possibly muster there. Jokic is a better player. That debate's closed. Like that shouldn't be a debate anymore in anybody's eyes.
And so when you're looking kind of at this series and that matchup, like I think for Miami, they go to Kevin Love in Game 2. Kevin Love gives you that bigger body, gives you a little bit of the rebounding. He's not the rebounder that he was, back in the day, of course, but you just got to credit Spo too. I mean, he seems to find the right ingredients every time. He's
the best coach in the league.
He is. He's a master mixologist, little bitters here, little vodka there. We'll just play it all together. It works. Some citrus. Everything's nice and balanced. And when Miami has it humming, they look great. And it's stark from Game 1 to Game 2, because in Game 1, they didn't have it. And then in Game 2, it's like, wait a minute. How is this happening? And I've picked against them every series. I will continue to pick against them. I thought Denver would win in 5 or 6, so that's still on target. But I don't know. Like when they won Game 2, I also, for the first time, was like, wait a minute, is this going to happen?
I did too. That's kind of my thing. It was like, I didn't think it was going to happen after Game 1, but they won Game 2. And I was like, is Miami going to keep doing this? Are they really going to have a couple games this series where they just hit 50% from beyond the arc, which has happened multiple times? Like there are games where they're shooting like 2 percentage points less than their opponents and still winning them when they should. Like every metric is broken by this Miami team right now. Like I don't know how they're making it work, but it continues to work clearly. And in a way, if you're Denver, I don't know that. I don't want to say they got deer in the headlights, because I still think Denver, again, can turn this back up, and they are the far better team on paper. But it's like, so was Milwaukee. I did have Miami beating the Knicks, but so were the Celtics, I thought. So it's like they've already plowed through 2. Like I had Milwaukee winning the title. They plowed through 2 juggernauts already. I'm not going to put it past them to get through the third. Again, I'm far from backing off my Denver pick. Like I think Denver is going to win this series. But yeah, Miami they battled back in the fourth. It was the way that they were able to just gut that out, being down, and finding a way to get those points. It's Duncan Robinson coming up big, 4 or 5 off the bench. It's Gabe Vincent, 23 points, all the money. That's probably the amount of millions that he's going to make a season this summer at this rate. They just continue to consistently get it from their main guys. And the interesting part that everybody's been talking about with Game 2 specifically, and I guess probably is the biggest thing to watch at this point, is, Jokic had 41 points. He was great, but Miami did a really good job of shutting everyone else down. And the fact that Jokic only had 4 assists, like that's by far the lowest he's had in a playoff game. Jamal Murray at 18, but the box score probably doesn't tell it. Like a lot of those shots were kind of late. Aaron Gordon only had 12, Jeff Green had 9, KCP had 6, Michael Porter Jr. only had 5. Like, they did a really good job of just saying, hey, Jokic, you can beat us, but we're going to make everybody else's life difficult. It worked in game 2, and that's going to be the question. Like, for as much as I love Spo, and I do think he's the best coach in the league, like, Mike Malone is no slack either. I would imagine he's going to cook up some adjustments. You got to see if they respond too. A lot of the talk after Denver has been their effort. There's been a lot of discussion, Mike Malone in the presser, but even Jeff Green, who obviously is like the OG on this team, he came out and said, yo, this is the finals. How can this happen? And he's not wrong. Like, I do think their defensive effort was pretty bad. They left a lot of wide open shots. And again, credit to Miami for knocking them down. But yeah, their rotations did feel like a step behind, and it is in the finals. More importantly, like, they have been dominating the transition matchup in this series.
Yeah.
When you're getting turnovers, like, that's how you're going to beat them. Like, get out and run. Miami is not going to be able to run with you. That is one thing I can 100% say.
Well, and that's why, I mean, we should mention, I mean, game 2, right? Jamal Murray gets a look at the buzzer, right?
Yeah.
That's why Mike Malone didn't call timeout. For the record, I call timeout. I want to get my team set. I want to get the best look. I know you don't want Miami to get its defense set. It's really easy hindsight for me to be like, it didn't work out. Call a timeout. I just feel like we've gone way too far in the other direction here, where it's like, I'm going to let my guys play. They'll figure it out, because usually it ends up with a bad look or a bad shot. Like, I feel like 70% of the time. And yeah, I mean, like, from the effort side of it, one thing that I was listening to Brian Windhorst talk about this with Zach Lowe about Miami's attitude after game 1, it was Denver's attitude after game 1, where they felt like, hey, we won this game, but Miami's probably upset that they didn't come back and win it, because Miami kind of put them on the ropes in the fourth quarter. And it'll be interesting to see in game 3 whether or not Miami, who now for 5 straight quarters have kind of had things in hand, have they figured something out here, or was it Denver? Was it Denver kind of, not having the effort, as Jeff Green kind of alluded to? It is odd, because this is the finals. Like, you would think, all right, hey, we got to wake up and play here.
Oh, the fourth quarter has Miami's time. What's crazy too, and I really wish I remember where I saw this tweet, so I want to give them credit, but they're negative point differential through the first 3 quarters, and then they're plus 90 in the fourth over the course of the playoffs. Like,
it's almost like they get a rhythm playing that garbage time in the early fourth quarter when they're down by double digits.
Well, they did play more garbage time than anybody during the regular season, so maybe there is a sense of that, because it did feel like that was one of the running jokes on Heat Twitter, is that they were consistently in garbage time mostly because they couldn't score. Except now, apparently, they only score. So
guys just start making buckets. It's like all of a sudden, like, Gabe Vincent hits one. It's like, wait a minute. And then
it's just like, I've seen switches flip in the NBA, but like, Nick, this team is 27th in offense in the regular season.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what we're watching. Like, I'm trying to think of the last time I felt this way about a champ, or not a champ, but like a team that made a run like this.
Oh, it's Dirk. It's got to be Dirk. In terms of individual, like in the squad.
No, not individual. I mean, like, that was still like, that was a 56 win team. Like, they were still a 3 seed. That's the weird thing.
Nobody's been that low. You're right. No, I don't think anybody.
Last 8 seed to make it was the Knicks when they played the Spurs in '99.
Yeah.
Yep. But that was a shortened season. Like, this was an 82 game real NBA season.
Yeah. Dude, they got smoked by Atlanta in the playing game.
Yes.
Like, it's not even like, they lost to Atlanta. They got killed by Atlanta in the playing game.
And let me ask you this. So 2 questions. Number 1, and this is an old, like, this is probably a little bit too cliche, but the odd thing about this, the series is tied 1-1. If you emptied these rosters and you drafted the total number of players, Jokic goes 1, Jimmy Butler probably goes 2.
No question goes 2.
And then after that, how many players are on Denver before you get to the next? Like, Bam, like, I don't want to discredit Bam too much. Yeah.
See, I don't think it's as many as you think. I think it's maybe like 1. Really, truly. I think Jamal Murray you absolutely take ahead of anybody else. But then I think you maybe take Bam then. I would take Bam. I'd probably take Bam over MPJ. I take him over Aaron Gordon. After that, it starts to get weird. But
that's the next thing. Is like in the top. I don't know. I think Denver probably has like 7 of the top 10 players in this series. Like Kyle Lowry isn't who he once was, right?
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
like
like,
Gabe Vincent isn't playing like it. You know, he's done it enough over the playoff run where I mean, I agree if I'm looking at the body of work, but I'm saying he consistently this run has brought it, I think. You're not wrong though. I mean, because yeah, Kevin Love is obviously way past his prime, still putting
washed,
great minutes, but he's obviously not who he was his prime. Kyle Lowry, same story, be it way different if he was in his prime. Um,
Kyle
I,
Lowry, still terribly dirty player. I love watching him play, but he's such a dirty player.
I
Terribly dirty.
he's definitely in the grifting Hall of Fame. There's no doubt about
Yes.
it. Like Embiid and Kyle Lowry and Marcus Smart and all the guys who are gonna maybe start feeling the fine of these potential flopping rules if they go into effect next year. We'll have to wait on that one. But I mean, I don't know. Like, is this? I'm not going to back off Denver in 5. I mean, game 3 is definitely going to be a real good temp game. But I mean, if Denver goes down and just wins game 3, you got to feel pretty good. At that point, you got 2 wins. You've got home court advantage the rest of the way. You'll take your chances. But
Here's
if they
the thing,
slip
like,
and they lose in game 3, like
what if Miami's
not scared of anybody? Like, that's the
No.
thing. I'm not worried about Miami's toughness. Like, we know if nothing else, they've got plenty of mental toughness. At the same time, I don't know. This is it's the weirdest run I've ever seen, and I don't know how to get a grasp on it. But I can't shake this just internal feeling that, and again, it flies in the face of me saying on the podcast that I thought this was going to be a dog walk for Denver, and it kind of was in the first game, and so that's why a part of me is like, what are we doing here? But maybe that's the question. What are we doing here? I don't know.
I couldn't tell you. Like, I mean, this is one of the craziest runs by a bunch of role players. Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, all-star level players. Where we put Jimmy in the whole kind of scope of things after this is going to be intriguing.
I think he's already there, no matter how it plays out. I mean, he's got 2 solo finals runs basically now with the like. This is really, I think, regardless of how this plays out, he's solidified. Obviously, he gets the ring. You go how much higher, just because it's one of the greatest, individual efforts ever. I brought up Dirk earlier. I still think that 2011 Dirk run is the best we're ever going to see individually for a while. Just because of who he went through. Like, at the end of the day, like, the Heat beat the Knicks in the second round, like, led by Jalen Brunson. And I know Brunson had a breakout year, but like, bro, Dirk beat the Spurs at their peak. He beat Kobe coming off titles. He beat the young Thunder with KD and Russ, and he beat the prime big 3. Like, like 3 of those teams are arguably better than any of the ones that that they kind of ran through this year. I would argue that Boston team for sure, and even that Milwaukee team, the way it ended too. Like, I can't sit here and defend Milwaukee and stick up for them either, the way they went out. So, regardless, like I said, he's cemented for sure. I mean, he's been too good for too long. Like, obviously, about his Chicago run, everything he did there in the early days. Like, his
second round pick.
He's still beloved in Philly. That's the crazy part. It's like nobody dislikes Jimmy in Philly. Everybody's like, yo, Jimmy was right.
No, I mean, like, Texas guy, heck of a story, right? My best friend's wife went to high school with him, and all the stories about how he was.
Why have you never told me? Wait a minute, you've never told me that Shelby went to high school with Jimmy Butler?
Shelby went to high school with Jimmy Butler. Probably because
we could say her name. Nobody knows who Shelby is on this podcast. I'm gonna blow her spot up.
But
congrats to them. They're having a baby.
I know their second baby. We were at the baby shower last weekend. By the way, was unaware you were allowed to have more than one baby shower. I thought it was one shower and you were done, but then they're called sprinkles after that.
No,
didn't really know that.
Yeah. Okay, no, I knew that. That was
you knew that.
I didn't know. I learned what a sprinkle was a few years ago because I didn't realize that because I'm kind of
had no idea. I thought it was like a one and done thing. You're finished.
Well, because it kind of is at first, right? Because it's like you get everything. It's like I get it, but some people have different amounts of kids. Like, you don't need doubles of everything either. Like, you realistically hand a lot of that stuff down. So I kind of like that name in a weird way, though. It's kind of funny, a little sprinkle.
I'm surprised that we don't throw way off tangent here. I'm surprised we don't throw a bigger party when you get a house. Because I'm not going to lie, I think getting a house these days is a lot harder than getting a kid.
I think neither are affordable these days, but I don't entirely disagree because I know a lot of people have kids and don't have houses. So
definitely. Getting back on track here.
Oh, you don't want to go full millennial doom and gloom? Come on, we got how much time you got?
Dude, You want like, dude, you want to get into it. I went house hunting on Sunday and just got done with the mortgage application process. Like we can get real low real quick here. I hope BetterHelp is sponsoring this.
My brother, I'm planning a wedding right now. I feel you. Like,
oh yeah, you're right,
buddy. How low do you want to go?
I remember that. Yeah,
yeah, that's super fun. But moving on from the finals, of course, Game 3 is we're recording this on Tuesday, so Game 3 is Wednesday. Then the 2-day break. Only one of these has a 2-day break, so then Game 4 will be on Friday, so that's kind of nice. Quick back-to-back in Miami. But do want to switch gears here a little bit now and get into the spree of coaching hires. Not really going to go in any particular order, so I'm going to start out west, and because that was really the only major one at this point, at least in the West, and that is Frank Vogel going to Phoenix. Of course, multiple head coaching stints, the championship with the Lakers in the bubble, pretty solid run with Indiana. I honestly thought he was good in Orlando too. I thought the roster set him up to fail there. I don't even really blame him for that. But I think when you look at the list of candidates that Phoenix had, I mean, to be quite honest, I thought Phoenix was going to hire Doc Rivers. So like I was ready to get these jokes off. But no, I think Frank Vogel's a really respectable coach. I mean, he's a great defensive guy. Certainly is going to help them in that realm. Has clearly a ton of playoff experience. We know going in with Phoenix with KD and Book that there's going to be a lot right away. The bigger question to me is not even Frank Vogel right now with them. It's what do you do with the roster this summer?
Sure.
Like what happens with Ayton? What happens with Chris Paul? Like those are all extremely valid questions, but I've always been a Frank Vogel guy. I think this is a good hire for Phoenix.
I do too, because they don't need help with their offense. And I know the NBA is not quite the NFL where you hire an offensive or defensive minded coach and that's the identity of your team. But, when you've got Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, and we'll see kind of what ends up happening, as you said, with the rest of the roster, they're going to get buckets. It's getting stops on the other end against, some of the teams that they went up against, like figuring out if you can how to slow Denver down and not just, not necessarily having to, get into a shootout every single night, because that wears a roster down over an 82 game stretch. So they've got some big roster decisions to make. And from that side of it, you got to figure out really Ayton's kind of the prime guy. There's questions about Chris Paul too, but I like Frank. I agree with you. I think, Frank has had a good run everywhere he's gone. He's he's friendly, he's reliable, all of that. But I think more than anything, he gives you a baseline for where your team is going to be defensively. And he's a stars coach, from Paul George, LeBron James, Anthony Davis. Like he has coached stars and he knows how to do that.
Yeah, definitely never overbearing either. Super knowledgeable guy.
Exactly.
Going east, I guess I didn't know if I want to do this by the shock factor or what I want to do, but I'm going to go with Phoenix's old coach first and bring up our guy, Monty Williams, going to Detroit and getting the bag over $85 million to coach the Pistons. Obviously a long-term deal in that sense too, 5 years. I at first I came on because here's the thing. I really like Monty as a human being. I think Monty's a great guy.
Me
truly.
too.
And so a part of me is like, you know what? The Pistons do need it's a bunch of young guys. Like Monty is going to teach those young guys to be good people. And you know what? Sometimes you need that. You need those habits. You need, just guys who have more patience. I think Monty for sure has been able to show that over the years. My question when I saw that dollar sign is, where do you rank Monty Williams in your NBA head coaches? Because he's getting paid to be like Eric Spoelstra right now. And I feel like Monty Williams is like the 10th best coach, maybe.
Maybe. I look at Monty as like a culture setter,
Yeah.
and that's great. But like, isn't that why you hired Dwayne Casey too? I mean, like Dwayne Casey's kind of, maybe I'm being disrespectful to Monty here, but like there is a top tier of NBA coach in the league. And then like, I would put Monty Williams on that second tier of guy. Yeah. And I don't know, like, I think that part of it is you're Detroit, right? Like, I mean, Detroit has turned into like a way station for coaches. Like they've gone through them, and you brought in the coach of the year in Dwayne Casey, right? He's gone in what, 3 years, 4 years you gave Dwayne Casey. And you're going to be picking near the top of the draft. They've got some okay players, but I think they kind of had to pay the tax here to get somebody of Monty Williams' stature in the door if they didn't want to go to, a top level assistant. You see Adrian Griffin gets a gig, right? So I think if they didn't want to go that way and they wanted a guy with experience, that's, that's kind of what the going rate was going to be, because Detroit doesn't really have a direction right now. We don't know what's going on with Cade Cunningham, really. That's kind of scary. They've got some other good players on the roster, but yeah.
Well, they've had no draft luck, of course, which hasn't helped either. It's like worst team in the league last year. They're picking 5 again this year. Cade is intriguing.
Yep.
I still have a lot of upside for him. I think he can be their number one guy. Obviously, a little worried about the injury with the amount of time that he sat out last year, but you do feel good about that. I mean, I think you nailed it. I think Monty is a culture setter. Like, Monty is going to come in with these young guys, and that's what they're looking for, because it's been listless in Detroit. Like, they haven't really had a direction. They've just kind of been floating in the wind. And I mean, frankly, that's kind of surprising. Like, this is a franchise that's been historically a lot more good than bad. I mean, obviously late 80s and early 90s with the Bad Boys, but I mean, even talking about dominating the first decade of the millennium in the East, they really haven't had anything going since then. I mean, a couple spots here and there, but they've largely been pretty mediocre. And so in a way, like, that's why I get bringing a guy like Monty in. I definitely agree with the pay and the tax element too. Like, you're right. Like, Detroit, especially now, is not going to be any top coach's first job, you imagine. But I also think that's why I think for Monty, there's the desire of stability. Like, if you're offering him this 5-year deal, I feel like you at least have some sort of understanding that he's going to be coaching 3 at the bare minimum. On one hand, the other part of that too is like, am I surprised that Monty went back? Just because, like, this is a team, like, Phoenix was in the NBA Finals a few years ago. Like, he was really close to getting a ring. You would think he'd get some offers as well from contenders, but I do think this is a good situation for him. They just paid him a ton of money.
I mean, at the end of the day, like, I mean, cash talks there. And I think that probably had quite a bit to do with it for Monty, though he's made a lot of money coaching. So, I mean, does that really matter as much? The question I think always is, as a coach, like, do you want to sit the year and be at the, top of a bench somewhere and be a lead assistant? Or do you just kind of want to run back into it? You don't know when the phone's going to stop ringing. So I'm sure that's what had a lot to do with it with Monty, where, he had his chance there in Phoenix. I was kind of surprised when they fired him. Not going to lie. Like, I thought maybe he'd get a full season run with the KD Suns there, but I think it's a hire that makes a lot more sense for it's a hire that makes a lot of sense for Detroit, just in terms of, all right, we need an adult in the room.
Yeah. And I think there was a lot of behind the scenes stuff in Phoenix too. Like, I don't think it was, because you're right in a sense with KD and Book. It's like, hey, how do you not bring him back? Like, they made the finals, but like, I think with Ayton, it's been a mess. Clearly, like, they're just, and unfortunately, it's just the reality of how the last 2 seasons ended. Like, when I think they're that demoralizing and you're just losing by 30 points in an elimination game, like, you kind of have to go look at yourself in the mirror and potentially make changes. Speaking of losing by 30 points in an elimination game, my Philadelphia 76ers have brought in a new head coach, Mr. Nick Nurse, of course, who has been a longtime rival of the said Philadelphia 76ers. It is still quite hilarious because, of course, he and Embiid have had plenty of back and forths here over the years. Certainly no spice lost in the Sixers-Raptors rivalry. But at the same time, so I guess it all just comes down to me is, it's like, Nick Nurse is definitely a better coach than Doc Rivers. I think if I have a concern with him, is that he's going to play the guys a lot in the regular season. Like, you can't do that with Embiid. And if they bring Harden back, you can't do that with Harden either. So where are these other minutes going to go from? Like, I would argue that their chance is already limited with running that roster back. Like, you're going to really, really put yourself in a hole there if you're burning them out in the regular season. But that also kind of gets to my point, is it's like, I don't know what coaching is going to do right now for the Sixers, because I still think there's a lot of questions. Like, you have to decide whether Harden's coming back or not, if he wants to go to Houston. And I do like, you have to see more out of Joel Embiid in the playoffs. Like, that's going to be the key to everything. It has to be like, Doc deserved to get fired for many, many reasons, but I don't blame Doc for them losing last year. Like, to me, coaching is not the reason they lost that series to the Celtics. It was the star guys. And so, in a way, maybe this just plays into my general just jadedness about the Sixers, but I'm happy about the Nick Nurse hire. Like, I definitely think it was a good decision, but I question how much it matters. Like, is he going to get them over the hump?
I don't think it matters as much. I think you put them in that list of teams that have, as you laid it all out there, more roster questions than they do coaching questions. Because when you have top end players like Embiid and Harden, if he comes back, it's really more about what you see from those guys. What I do like is in those playoff series, Nick Nurse has shown to be the tactician that, Eric Spoelstra is, where he can think outside the box. He can put guys in the right positions. And a lot of times when you're just that bit away from making it to the Eastern Conference Finals, making it to the NBA Finals, that's, that's kind of where a guy can really make a difference there. So stars win in the, in the NBA, but that coaching makes a difference in the postseason.
Yeah, no, I mean 150%. Whether it's shortening the rotations. I mean, hell, like we said, again, this has been like a Spolstra propaganda podcast, I feel like the last 3 weeks, but I mean, that to me is the ultimate showing of that right now. The coaching adjustments he made in game 7, the coaching adjustments he made in game 2, it's super important. But last but not least, we of course do want to hit the Bucks as well. Adrian Griffin coming over from the Raptors. Again, a top assistant there, and then they're bringing him in to replace Mike Budenholzer. Nothing like your first job, having title expectations. They have roster questions as well, not quite to the extent that the Sixers do, but they have some decisions with Middleton to make. They have again, some of the guys on this roster are older. You're gonna have to make them here sooner than later. But I mean, it goes without saying, like you got the shot to coach Giannis. Like if you can write this year off as an aberration, you still got to feel pretty good about your chances going back next year. I mean, they did finish number 1 in the East. They were the best team overall in the regular season. So
yeah, he had to stop here in Orlando too, right? As an assistant. It's great to see Adrian Griffin get an opportunity. It reminds me a little bit of kind of like Ty Lue-esque, a guy that had played in the league, been around, has been on benches, and now is being brought in where his first opportunity is coaching a top 3, top 5 player, best player in the league, in the Eastern Conference, in the Midwest, and they want to win a championship. So it really does feel kind of Ty Lue-esque there for him. The interesting thing about Milwaukee is that they had Griffin and they had Nurse both as candidates. So they picked the lead assistant in Toronto over the head coach in Toronto, which I don't know what it says, but it feels like it says something there. Whether Adrian Griffin had some relationships there with the players, whether or not they felt like, he was just a different presence than Nick Nurse that may fit with that roster. But that was interesting to me.
It always is interesting with the balance too, because in NBA coaches more than other sports, I feel like there's just more retreads. Like guys have probably coaching lifetimes beyond that they should in a number of cases. But I mean, you do think about, not just because some obviously like with the Popoviches and the Spos of the world where they've been tenured for a long time, but you think about Doc Rivers and how long he'd been coaching. You think about how long Tibbs has been coaching. Even a guy like Mike Malone now, how long he's been coaching, how long Budenholzer was coaching before he got, laid off this gig. Like they just do have a higher shelf life. And so they're, it is kind of interesting to read into when do guys go with somebody that's new and different, kind of like Adrian Griffin is like, this is a good assistant. He's deserved the headshot. Let's give him a chance. Dude's got a PhD. I didn't know that until I was doing the prep for this podcast. That's pretty cool. But yeah, but versus the like definitive, guy already, because obviously Nick Nurse has a championship, having won in 2019 in Toronto. So it is always an interesting balance. Maybe you want, because I wonder specifically with Milwaukee, because Budenholzer have been around for so long. Maybe you want to just go in a newer direction because of that. Like you don't want to just do a. I don't want to say Budenholzer and Nick Nurse are the same coach, but like you don't want it maybe in the similar vein. I don't know.
Yeah,
that's just me. I'm speculating. Like I obviously don't have anything concrete.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, like I think those listening that own businesses that have done hiring too, sometimes a guy just wins it in the interview, right? And that may be what happens. Like there's just a good vibe between the candidate and the employer, and it feels right. And maybe that's just how it was with Adrian Griffin. I mean, he's been an assistant coach 15 years. He's been around. It's time for him to get a chance. It's great to see, because you're right. I mean, you look through this hiring cycle and Monty Williams gets another chance. This is what chance 3 for Monty Williams to be a head coach. You got a retread there. You got Frank Vogel on team 4 or 5 or something like that.
I will say Mike Brown made me come around a little bit because I thought Mike was a good hire for Sacramento, but like, boy, he coached his rear end off at Sacramento this year. And that really shifted things obviously for that franchise. So
yeah.
But you're right. You're not wrong.
It's just nice to see a new guy get a shot, right? I mean, Nurse is on, clearly things that kind of hit a wall there in Toronto for Nick Nurse, so that makes sense.
Yeah,
he was kind of like Budenholzer when he left Miami and went to Milwaukee. Like sometimes just the message gets old, but it's nice to see somebody get a first try.
That was kind of why I wanted Sam Cassell a lot. I was really beating the Sam Cassell drum for the Sixers, like just to kind of give it somebody new. Like this is a guy who, like you mentioned, played in the league for a long time, really well respected, has worked with a lot of star caliber players at this point since he's been an assistant. But it's kind of it is interesting when you want to make that decision when you bring in somebody like a little more like a known commodity, if you will.
Not saying that. It's an interesting risk when you have a guy like Giannis and the clock is always ticking.
Yeah.
So that's a tough decision to make. Like as a GM, if you were to have asked me, so who hired Monty Williams and who hired Adrian Griffin? I would have told you Adrian Griffin's coach in Detroit.
Yep.
Monty Williams is in Milwaukee because it's just more of a known entity. That's what makes this kind of interesting.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. And like you said, nothing like having title expectations with pressure at your first job. He's on that Joe Mazzulla tip. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode of the Drive and Dish NBA podcast. By the way, the Celtics shouldn't fire Joe Mazzulla. I stand by that. I said that a few weeks ago, but like, we got to give Joey Maz a break here a little bit. Tough situation. Definitely got hazed on the job a little bit and had a tough go of it with Spo. They battled back from 3-0. Give him some credit. You don't accidentally like battle back from 3-0 either. And he made the adjustments against the Sixers that I thought won them that series.
I think if you wanted him fired when it was 3-0, then you should still want him fired when it was 3-0 Miami, right? But that team proved that they didn't quit on him. And that was kind of where I was. Like if they turned it around, I like you staying with him a little bit.
If they stink next year and they're disappointing, then I think maybe you give him his over his head. But it's just like he wasn't expecting to be there, and that's kind of my thing. It's like he got thrown into it because of the Udoka situation last minute, and I mean, again, had them one game away from the NBA Finals. It's tough when you've got title expectations, but I don't know. I'm not necessarily fully hitting the panic button there. But again, you can find the podcast anywhere you find a podcast. Watch the podcast on YouTube. Subscribe to the Drive and Dish NBA podcast. Again, shout out to Nick Renowitz for coming on the show. Follow him on Twitter at GetNickG. Of course, when the G League season starts back up, make sure y'all are tuned into the Osceola Magic as well. We will keep you posted on Justin's paternity leave. That's just nothing sinister. We just like keeping you posted about that. Like his kid's super adorable. And we will see you guys next time.